Good morning. This is our Wednesday math for pre-algebra, April 8th, and we are on 13.7 volumes of prisms and cylinders. So we've been doing so far the surface area, which means we take the shape and we're just measuring the area of the outside of the shape. Well, today we're going to begin to talk about volume. And volume is how much it holds. So if I have a cute little square planter that I'm going to put a plant in, okay, and I want the surface area, I'm actually just saying like what the material is made out of, right? So if it's metal, how much metal do I need to make that planter box? If I'm talking about volume, I'm going to see, well, how much dirt can I put into that planter box? So volume is not measuring something flat, it's measuring how much can it hold, okay? So volume, I want to start really simply and just talk to you about volume. So do you remember when we measured area, we took our little plot of land and we cut it into squares. We cut everything into squares and we say, well, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's 10 units squared, right? Okay, well, when we measure volume, we now can't do a flat square, can we? We can't fill it up that way. We actually need it to have height. We need it to be 3D. So what we're going to do is when we measure volume, we're going to take everything and we are going to make it into cubes. Now, cubes are really cool to work with because they are the same distance here, here, and here, okay? So we need a height, a width, and a length, right? So we have 3 measurements in a cube, but they're all going to be the same. And so for this instance, let's say that this one is 1 centimeter, 1 centimeter, 1 centimeter. Then my volume would be 1 times 1 times 1, 1 centimeter, but this time it's not squared. How many times did I multiply it? 3 times, so we would call it cubed, which it makes a cube, right? So that's why when we do something to the 3rd power, we call it cubed, because it actually makes a cube in volume, okay? So if you will look there on page 576, you are going to see that you have a bunch of cubes put together in this rectangular prism. And so what we want to do is we want to know, how do I find the volume of a rectangular prism? And it says the volume of a rectangular prism is B times H. Now, make sure that we write prism up above because we're going to be finding the volume of several things and having formulas to use. Well, what does the B and the H mean? Well, the volume of a prism is equal to the area of the base. So this is the area of the base. And how do we find the area? Do you remember? Length times the width. Do you remember that? Okay. And then this is going to be the height of the prism. Okay? So I have this prism and it's made up of many cubes. I'm not going to draw all those cubes. But for instance, one cube maybe goes to here and it goes back like this, right? And that's 1 cube with a length of 1. And I want to see how many cubes it's going to take to fill up this entire space, and that's my volume, okay? So my volume is basically the measurements of the length and the width and the height multiplied together. So in our picture, we see that the length is 3 centimeters. And we see that the width is 2 centimeters. And then we see that the height is 2 centimeters in that picture. Okay, so I'm going to take my length and my width. 3 times 2 is what? 6. And then I'm going to multiply it times the height, which is 2. So my formula would look something like this. 3 times 2 times 2. 3 times 2 is 6. Bring down my 2. 6 times 2 is 12. And because it's in centimeters, it would be centimeters cubed. And this is really important that we use that centimeters cubed symbol. Okay, so now that we've kind of worked through that, let's start with example 1 and see what we can do. So example 1 says, find the volume of a rectangular prism that has a 5 foot by 9 foot base, okay, and a height of 2.5 feet. Okay, so if this is our base, let's go ahead and multiply and find our base. 5 times 9 is 45 times 2.5. Okay, and when we multiply those together, if you put that into your calculator, you should get 112.5, and I want to use my feet cubed to show that it's volume. Okay, example 2. Example 2 says, find the volume of the triangular prism. So in this picture, we have this thing going on. It looks like that's a right triangle. Something like that, okay? In this case, if we think about this, isn't half of a triangular prism half of a rectangular prism, right? Because couldn't I extend this out and make a rectangular prism? Do you see the rectangle on top, right? And like this, and now I have a rectangular prism. Because remember, a triangle is half of a rectangle. So what we're going to do is we're just going to say, well, I'm just going to take half of the volume of a rectangular prism. Okay, so the volume of a triangular prism is just going to be half of a rectangular prism. So what do I need for my base? For my base, I need my width and my length and my width. Now look at the base there. Okay, we want to use 9 and 12, don't we? Do we want to use the 15 at the top? No, it's not a necessary number. 9 and 12 is the length and the width of the base. They're the ones on the right angle. Okay, that right angle. They're the length and the width. We don't want to know the cut in half part. Okay, and then our height is 10 centimeters. Okay, so this problem becomes 1/2 of 9 times 12 times 10. Okay, so when I do that, I get, they did it a little bit different, so I'm going to put it in my calculator really quick. 9 times 12 times 10. I may have made a mistake. I just thought about divided by 2. Let's see. 540. Oh, nope, I did it right. Okay, so we're going to take this number and we get 1,080, and we're going to bring down our 1/2, and when we multiply this in, because we're saying 1,080 divided by 2, we get 540, and what was it in? It was in centimeters cubed. Okay. All right. So now let's move on to find the volume of a circular cylinder. Okay. Now we're still using cubes, but some of those cubes are going to have to be shaved off, and they're going to have to be calculated with pi, because there's some circles involved in there, right? And so it's not as easy to fill up a cylinder with cubes, but it can be done. And so let's look at our formula for a circular cylinder. Okay, and a circular cylinder is something like this. Okay, it's that 3D object, and it's the volume equals B times H. Okay, well, how do we find the base of a cylinder? Well, I'm going to look at the base there, and I'm going to see that it is a circle. So how do I find the area of a circle? So that is pi r squared, if you remember. So this is actually pi r squared to find the base. And then we're going to multiply that times the height of the cylinder. Okay, so this is just the height. So if you'll see, this is really the formula we're going to be looking at, but we have to think base times the height. Okay, so in example 3, they give us a cylinder, and they tell us that the height is 7 centimeters, and that the radius of the circle is 4 centimeters. Okay, so we simply need to plug it in. The volume equals pi, the radius is 4 squared, times 7. Okay, so let's do volume equals pi times 4 times 4 is what? 16 times 7. So next I'll do 16 times 7. Volume equals pi. Let me put that into my calculator here. Hope you got 112. Pi 112. And I'm going to take my 112 and multiply it times 3.14. And I got 351.7. So the volume equals 351.7. If you got 6/8, then you just round it to the nearest tenth. Okay, and it was in centimeters cubed because we're finding the volume. Okay, let's move on to example 4. Set this down. I'm going to erase this, but I think we're still going to be working with the cylinder, so I'm going to go ahead and leave my cylinder drawing up. So I like to do everything in a drawing, right, so I can see what I'm doing. It says find the radius of a cylinder. Okay, so what are we finding? It says this one. Find the radius of a cylinder with a height of 12 feet and a volume of 432 pi feet cubed. Okay, so in this case, I have the volume. So my volume is 432 pi equals, I'm going to go ahead and write this out, pi r squared, because do we have the radius? No, times the height, which I do have, which is 12. Okay, now I'm going to algebraically solve this problem and find r. So we're trying to get r by itself. So let's go ahead and switch sides like you guys like to do. Times 12 equals 432 pi. I just swapped the problem so I can get r by itself over here. Well, the first thing that I want to do is divide by 12. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. 432 divided by 12 is 36. So now I have pi r squared equals 36 pi. Now I want to get rid of the pi over here, so I'm going to divide by pi. Divide by pi. They actually both cancel out. Okay, so I'm left with r squared equals 36. How do I get rid of the square? Well, I take the square root of both sides. These cancel out. I'm left with r equals the square root of 36. So I can take my 36 and go 6 times 6. There it is. The answer is 6. So my radius is 6 what? It's 6 feet. Now don't put 6 feet cubed because this isn't volume. It's a straight line measurement. Okay, so the radius is 6 feet. All right, and you are ready for your exercises today. And let's do numbers 1 through 30 all. I want you to get good practice with these.